today I am east of Toledo, going to Cleveland for a pickup for Ithaca, New York. Had a really rough night last night. I was driving more or less for 24 hours nonstop till about 6 this morning, and I was a zombie. I'm getting ready to bounce off 57 years old. I can't do these all-nighters anymore. My body doesn't go for that. Anyway, I am crawling slow motion. I got quite a few hours to blow on the drive, so I'm not going to be in a hurry. But I am going towards Cleveland along the coast road. Interstate 80 actually is a toll road, and it costs $30 to get over there if I go on the interstate behind me. And I don't feel like giving the government any more money. So I'm taking the back roads. It goes along the lake, and it's foggy out and low ceilings, and I kind of thought it looked cool. So see if I can see anything interesting out here today. Anyway, topic of the day. Within an organization, you have people at different levels in the company, like let's say call it a Fortune 500 company. On one extreme end, you have the CEO, and on the other extreme end, you got the new kid working in the mailroom, let's say. And those people normally don't rub shoulders, and there's not a whole lot of scenarios where the mailroom guy is going to go up to the top floor and mosey on into the corner office of the CEO and go rub shoulders with him. That just doesn't happen in the real world. There are some weird scenarios that might happen, and the CEO definitely has the option to go down into the bowels and go talk to the lowly mailroom guy. But if the mailroom guy felt the need to go up there, he would have to go through quite a few firewalls even to get on that floor, and then have to get past the head honcho secretary, and it's not etiquette. The military is kind of the same way, but a lot more rigid. A lowly private's not going to just go barge in and talk to the colonel or the general. You're either being summoned or you're there for not a good reason. And you don't just walk in and say, "Hey, Bob, how you doing?" You walk in the room, you stop and salute, you announce your presence, they salute back, and then you say, "Reporting is ordered," or you tell them why you're there. But there's a very rigid structure as to how that happens. And the higher ranking guys let the non-commissioned officers, the sergeants, handle the little guys, so they don't have to mess with it. Which brings us to today. Today is June 6th. As we all know, June 6th, 1944, 81 years ago, is when the Normandy invasion happened. It's a well-recorded historical event. They've made more than enough movies. The Longest Day, Saving Private Ryan, one of the greatest war movies of realism never made, was about D-Day. And during that battle, there was a kid. I call him a kid. He was 18 or 19 years old, and he was a private. His last name was Ray, W-R-A-Y or W-R-E-Y. I don't remember which. And he was a member of the 29th Infantry Division, which was a National Guard unit that got federalized and became a U.S. Army unit. And I don't know a lot of the background of how he ended up there, but he was on the ground as an infantryman. And he didn't have the Garand, the big infantry rifle. He had not the M1 Garand, but the M1 carbine, the smaller one, the one that I actually am more fond of. And he was poking around, not quite into hedgerow country, but he was poking around in some heavily wooded areas with some roads. And he peeked out of the hedgerow, and up a ways there was a cobble wagon, which is the German Army equivalent of a Jeep, with a guy standing next to it. So he said, "Ha, here's my chance to go grab some prisoner." So he pokes his head back into the bushes, and he ran down the hedgerow or the line of bushes on the inside, kind of judged the distance, and then when he ran out to the end, he bailed out and with his M1, and there were 4 guys standing there. Oops. And he said there's a phrase, hosh, hands up, basically. And they didn't react, and they started reaching for weapons. So he did what in the military they describe as servicing. He was close range, and he went bang, 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 and took all 4 of them out. And then he ran up and checked up and down the road. There was nobody else there. And he noticed that all 4 of them were wearing long coats with lapels, and the lapels on the long coats were red, bright red, which he knew was high ranking. And on the hood of this cobble wagon were maps laid out, a whole pile of them. So he grabbed all the maps. There were 2 satchels, which is it's called a man purse, a big man purse with other documents in it. So he rolled up and bear hugged the maps, grabbed the 2 satchels, picked up one more item off the ground, and took off running, went back to the bushes, and started racing back towards the rear. And to capture the enemy's maps is, especially during that era, that is the ultimate intelligence coup. And instead of going back and handing them off to his sergeant, who would then hand them up higher, who would then hand them up to somebody else, who would then involve somebody else, Private Ray just took off running, went through everywhere, went all the way back into their headquarters area where their colonel had his command post set up. And it just so happens that Omar Bradley, the Corps commander, was in there getting a briefing and updating everyone. And when you travel with the super high-ranking guys, they have a private security with them and bodyguards, and again, you're not going to go talk to these guys. You're not going to get through the wavelength. Well, Private Ray came through the crowd, through the security, running, burst into the room with the army commander, not knowing he was there, Bradley, and all these other high-ranking people in the middle of a briefing, and he blasted into the room and said the 4 magic words, "I've got their maps," and vomited all these maps on the table. And as per the unit's history, you couldn't have hit those guys with electricity and got them to move that fast. They poured over these maps, went tearing through them, and started handing off maps to different people. And their maps were depicting where the Germans' troop concentrations were, where the supplies were, where they had planned all their attacks, where their assembly points were. It was all plotted on these maps. And they started yelling, "Get every artillery gun in this area firing, get all this stuff going." It was a madhouse. And he handed over the satchels. And Omar Bradley, turned to him and he said, how do you know what just happened? And he said, "I don't know who they are, but that last item he picked up off the ground was one of their hats. And it kind of looks like a bus driver's hat." And he handed the general the hat, and inside of it had the name that I can't possibly pronounce of who it belonged to. And that gave up a giant coup. And that action by Private Ray probably saved thousands of American lives and Allied lives by being bold enough to go out by himself and capture all this equipment and capture these maps, but then to just bypass the entire system to make sure they get into the right hands as quick as humanly possible. And that's just a little thing in history you're not going to watch in a movie, you're not going to read about it in a book unless you're weird like me and you dig. That's what's popping into my head. June 6th is a very well-known date. June 4th is also an important date that nobody talks about, because that was the day that in 1944, 2 days before Normandy, that Rome was captured. That was the first enemy capital captured during the war. But as soon as Normandy happened, all the attention shifted. General Mark Clark was mad because he wasn't on the headlines anymore. And that's, again, also the day the U-505 was captured in the Atlantic, that German submarine. But anyway, that's what I was thinking about today is, what's been going on today is a very historical event. If you do the math, the youngest Normandy invasion survivor would probably be 99 to 100 years old right now. There's some out there, but not many. Those are the guys that made the difference, and those are the guys that made the sacrifice. All right, that's my thoughts. Like I said, I'm driving through some little bitty town. I got Lake Erie off my left here, just out of sight. And I'm going through, I don't even know what this is. Clay Township. That's the name of where I'm at right now. And I'm just going to mosey on over here and pick up a load here this afternoon. I'll leave this running for a minute so you can see this cool little town. There's a water tower that says Genoa, but that's not what it says on my map, so I don't even know. Okay, I don't know where I am at this point. The only problem I would see about living in an area, a little rural area along the lake like this, is the humidity up here is really high. And in the wintertime, it is deathly cold when the wind starts blowing. I don't care what you're wearing, the wind goes through it. Hey, look, a free cat in the road. I'm running about 8,000 miles a month on this van. And I bring my own oil change gear with me because I run synthetic, and pulling into a place and getting a synthetic oil change is like $110. And I found out on Amazon where I could buy a 5-quart synthetic oil for $21 and get it shipped to the house. That I use wick filters. You want to steer clear of Fram. They're made out of paper, but everybody uses Fram for some reason. For $10 or $11. So for $32, $33, I can do my own oil changes. And what I do is I buy a $2.99 oil pan, so I don't have room to carry it. And I change the oil, and I throw the oil pan away, and then I go buy another one when I need it again. Because I literally can't fit it in my van. And last night I did my oil change in a parking lot in the dark. And the van is low enough to the ground that I can't get my skinny self under there. And if I could, the oil pan is too high up where I don't have any room to work. So I have to find a curve to kind of get the vehicle up off the ground on one side so I can get my tools up under there. And I was in a parking lot, kind of a gravel lot, and there was a little pile of asphalt. I drove the right tire up on top of the asphalt, which lifted the vehicle about 4 or 5 inches, which was all I needed to get up under there. And I always feel good when I get an oil change. The Ford has that little computer that tells you excuse me, it tells you how much life you have left in the oil, and I get it down, it's percentages, and I get it down into single digits, and that's when I redo it, and you reset the meter. So I had, I think, 6% left on it when I changed it. But it always makes me feel good with fresh oil, because that is literally the life and death of your vehicle, the oil. The other fluids and services, but the oil's the big one. Made a delivery last night at 3:30 in the morning up in Detroit. There was zigzagging following the GPS, and I went as far into the hood as you could get to make that drop. And it was a gated compound, big warehouses. They had security everywhere, security driving around. And then as soon as you go back out the gate, you're back in the middle of the hood. That was a rough area. I saw cars randomly parked and the windows are all covered, which pretty much tells you people are living in them. And I saw one vehicle had all the windows knocked out. As I went by, I kind of looked over. There was a person sleeping on the ground next to it. It was like maybe that was their car or something. That was just a rough area. Speed limit through here is 55. There's I'm kind of new at this going live thing, and I'm not sure what's supposed to happen. I just know there's. It would appear I'm in the middle of nowhere. All right, like I said, there's people out here that run live streams driving down the road. Either can travel or don't travel or won't. So that's why I got this one going. Driving by an old burn that's collapsing here. Just went by it. You remember, barns are painted red. And the question of why do they paint barns red? What's the fascination with that color? And it's not. If you've ever built anything out of raw wood, you leave it out in the weather long enough, the wood is bad. So you have to protect it. And there is something in the soil that you could mix to make a crude protect paint. I don't know if you know what the compound is, but you can make it out of the ground and you mix it all up, it turns red. That's the only reason they came up with that color. And then after a while, just people started using real paint. They just painted red. That was the tradition. But I looked that up one day when I was looking at weird historical facts of New England, because I've got that kind of free time on my hands. All right, I got somebody coming up behind me, so I got to pick up the pace here a little bit. For all you young folks that don't remember the old days, there was a time back in the 70s when they mandated a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit due to the oil crunch. And if you don't know how horrible that was, go on a long cross-country trip sometime and set your cruise control on 55. And you will quickly understand where serial killers come from. That is a murderously slow speed on the open interstate on a long drive. Murderously slow. All right, I'm going to cut this off. This is kind of getting monotonous out here, but this is the terrain. North Ohio, northwestern Ohio along Lake Erie. A little bit of farmland, little small town. It's kind of a nice area. Take care.